And welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to another week, another edition here of the PondCast, episode number 59. I'm, of course, your side VIP with him, joined by our lovely producer Kuro, and of course by everyone in the chat as well. Welcome, one and all, to our weekly talk show, our weekly news, even review here of all things StarCraft and all things StarCraft adjacent as well, as it has been a very intense week of StarCraft. Of course, we were previously covering Euthermal's 2v2 circuits, and we'll be going over the playoffs and the conclusion of that event here. That's, of course, the kind of biggest event that was concluding. Likewise, we also have the StarCraft League, which did begin this week as well. There's a lot to get into. First things first, we do have some roster changes. Of course, we did announce the return of a Nightmare not too long ago, if you recall. That was, what, 2 weeks ago at this point, and we now have announcements. Streamer Zone, they picked up many players, and they have picked up Nightmare once again. Nightmare was on Streamer Zone before he had retired from StarCraft, before he did join his Deadlock team. Now he is back. Now he's back on Streamer Zone, has been picked up once again. So shout out to Nightmare for his return to StarCraft, and again, does seem like he is, I mean, the announcement itself does, announce his return from retirement. Nightmare has also been streaming a lot as well. He's been quite dedicated. He's been on that grind. It is a little bit unfortunate that this return happens after EWC during the off-season, but regardless, he is back. He is looking to devote his time, and we'll see how quickly he can kind of strive to greater heights. We'll be going over a lot of tournament results this week, and he has been very active in those tournaments, and you can get a gauge on his current skill level, bearing in mind that he's only been back for around 2 weeks, and he will only get stronger and stronger from here on forward. Bear that in mind as well. So it's going to be really interesting to catalog, or to keep an eye on his growth as a player over the course of the next couple of months. So that, welcome back, Nightmare, and also welcome back to Streamer Zone. That also leads us to Honmono. Speaking of someone joining Streamer Zone, Honmono has left Streamer Zone. Was on the team for a very short period of time, but has since left Streamer Zone. Again, he joined Streamer Zone to travel to DreamHack Dallas to be a part of that tournament. Now that DreamHack Dallas has come to an end, has concluded, still a little bit later after EWC, that is where he has bid adieu to Streamer Zone, and looks like after his departure of Streamer Zone, he has joined Team Hyper 1 once again. So he is back on Hyper 1. I will say that Homeowner, he has been a little bit more inactive as of late, so it is exciting to see him back, return, and we'll see how if he goes back to StarCraft Evolution again, if he starts competing on a regular basis once again. We should stop for quite some time. Speaking of players leaving teams, another announcement here. Gumiho, he was on SHUL Esports for his run at EWC. Now that the Esports World Cup has concluded, he has since left SHUL. We do expect to see a lot of announcements like this in the near future regarding players that join teams for this reason. Speaking of potentially Classic joining Virtus Pro, speaking of potentially Showtime joining Sentinels and these other teams, a lot of these teams did pick up players solely for their results in the EWC, and since then we've had players like Gumiho leave their team. We've had Creator also leave his team, Alcadzia Esports, Gumiho as well, and we'll see how many more get announced. I mean, as always, we do hope that these teams do devote and do commit a little bit more time and dedication to their players. We always speak on Team Vitality, for example, how they have announced multi-year deals with Maru and with the rest of their team. We're hoping to see something similar, but the reality is some of these teams, they're only really interested in that EWC. And again, it is uncertain as to whether or not StarCraft will be at the next year's Esports World Cup. So once it is announced for next year's events, then we're probably going to see these teams reach out once again to the players, pick them back up for the season, for the circuit. So I hope that Gumiho can soon find a team, assuming he is looking to continue to compete in StarCraft 2. Best of luck. Best of luck. That leads us here into the RSL Season 2 fan vote. We were speculating on this last week, as last week we actually went over the entirety of the qualifiers for Season 2 of the Revival StarCraft League. Again, RSL Season 1 did wrap up not too long ago. That was pre-EWC. Now we're beginning the second season. If you missed out on the qualifiers, we did cover the qualifiers here on the channel. The VODs are available on YouTube, and if you want our discussion, or at least a brief kind of overview overview of those results. We did cover it last week during the PondCast. Here, and if you remember, we had some predictions in regards to which players would be most likely voted in. If you remember, the kind of prerequisite was that players that had to have played and competed in the qualifier would be eligible to be voted on by the fans, by the patrons over on RSL Patreon. Now at least I had assumed that Gimiho and Zan were a sure thing, 100%. Gimiho and Zan, I assumed that they were going to be a sure thing, and bam, they do get voted in. Again, there are a lot of fans, I should say. They have a lot of fans, they have a lot of star power behind them, so did think that was going to be a sure thing. If you remember, my hope was that we could see a Zerg player invited, and a Zerg player voted. I was hoping, just because the Zerg representation is very low. I mean, as it always is, but it's very, very low for the RSL. Even lower than last season, so I was hoping that maybe a Zerg player could be voted in. If you remember, though, the only Zerg player that competed in the RSL qualifiers that would be eligible, that is of a high level, was Young Yakov. Young Yakov, he would have been the only Zerg option, and unfortunately, again, he doesn't have as much star power, as much of a big name as some of these other players. So I was hoping that maybe Young Yakov could be voted in, but no. So no Zerg player gets voted in. Instead, it's Gimiho Zan, also Trigger and Bunny as well. So we have 2 extra Protosses and 2 extra Terrans added to the roster, added to the RSL Season 2 lineup. And as we have heard here in the announcement, we will be having the group drawings for the round 16 soon. So I imagine that's going to be live. I mean, it says here that they're going to be creating a video regarding that, posting it, uploading it soon to have that final lineup of the round of 16. Bearing in mind as well that the RSL does begin in a week. In a week. In around 2 weeks. Around 2 weeks' time is going to be the RSL. So we're probably going to be hearing about the groups soon before we dive into the Revival StarCraft 2 Season 2 event. Oh boy, so best of luck. Best of luck to all those involved, and congratulations to those that did get voted in. My condolences to those that barely didn't quite make the cut. As that leads us to our next big bit of news, and that is the SC Evo Patch Notes. StarCraft Evolution, we actually finally got back to casting some SC Evo not too long ago when we were covering the show matches. That was this Monday. This Monday we covered the Epic Series show match between Tasia and Classic. It was a lot of fun, and it reminded me just how much fun we do have with StarCraft Evolution. It was a nice breath of fresh air. Again, I do apologize for the SC Evo fans that we have out there that typically tune into us for a lot of StarCraft Evolution content. We just haven't had the luxury of having the time to cover those events. We've just been so busy with EWC, Fusion Esports League, Home Story Cup, RSL Season 1. There's just been now the Thermal 2-2 circuit, of course, as well. Because we've been so busy with these other events and so busy with these other circuits, we just haven't had the time to squeeze in StarCraft Evolution casts. Unfortunately, whenever we have to make a decision on what to cast and what not to cast, usually SC Evo does fall by the wayside just because we devote a lot of time to StarCraft 2 events as our main priority. And then whenever we have free time, then we can slip in some StarCraft Evolution. That's typically how we approach things. And unfortunately, again, SC Evo has been on the cutting block when it comes to what events we typically do cast and do cover, or we try to cast and cover. Likewise, I was also, unfortunately, I wasn't quite able to cast. There was one day that we didn't cast. That was yesterday. Yesterday we didn't cast. We were slated to cover some StarCraft Evolution, and we missed out on Pegasus Cup as well. I do apologize. Again, I was feeling under the weather, was a little bit unwell. It is winter here. It's been very cold, and unfortunately got a little bit sick. But thankfully, I'm good. I'm recovered. And now we can go back to covering StarCraft Evolution, especially with the SC Evo Championship, SC Evo League Championship, starting up last week. Last weekend was the round of 36. We'll be going over those results. Don't you worry. We're going over those results later on during the podcast. So we'll be getting there, of course. And as we should be adding that to the to our topic list, by the way. We'll be going through that. Likewise, before we get into those results, before we get into the round of 36, we have patch notes. We have the patch notes. Now, again, we've been avoiding covering a lot of this just because we've been our PondCasts have been so dense, and usually it's been like PondCast into a cast as well, so we just haven't had the time to. Last we touched on SC Evo, it was StarCraft Evolution Update 1.16 or Patch 1.16. That was the big patch. It was a controversial one. It was the degenerates rushed and the it was the patch that was poorly written. I had just absolutely just atrocious. But what's important is the content itself of these patches is what is being done, what is being brought forward. Of course, we have already discussed about the kind of changing in the hierarchy, or the changing of some of the people behind the scenes working on StarCraft Evolution, how Hyper One has taken the reins in regards to balance. We did already discuss our own concerns regarding that, the negative outcomes of that as well. But overall, is still very passionate about the mod, is still very passionate about the game, and is pushing forward with, bringing it to further and further, I should say, heights. So here we go. First things first, we have the 1.16.1 patch. Oh boy. So from the beginning here, we do have some new models. We did already notice some of these models and some of these changes, as we already covered some StarCraft Evolution in recent times. Looks like we have a new model for the engineering bay. Just to reiterate, for a lot that maybe are a little bit unfamiliar with StarCraft Evolution is a mod that does bring together Brood War and SE2 and has them pit and face off against each other in a 1v1 format, in a competitive format. Now, StarCraft Brood War and SE2, they're the races, Terran, Protoss, Zerg, and Zerg. They're similar in name only. Like a lot of these races are very, very different from each other. They play very differently. That's what makes it so interesting to cover these events. So they're doing the best they can to distinguish the races from each other. That is why they're creating and introducing these new models, new skins, new upgrade visuals as well, all to make sure that, say, Brood or Terran does look and feel visually different to SE2 Terran, because it works very differently. So they want to distinguish one from the other. So slowly over time, even though yes, there is a StarCraft 2 eBay model that they could use, and they have been using it, well, when they get around to it, they ideally do want to replace 100% of the visual models of the units and the buildings, to make it all custom. And here we have the eBay coming in. So we have our Brood War eBay that has been created, so it is great to see. Likewise, because of the anniversary, which was quite some time ago, it looks like they did actually add some theme skins to try to celebrate that, of course. Looks like we have some other model updates. We have the Valkyrie weapon effects, we have the Siege Tank weapon effects, just some small scaling effects or some small effects here and there regarding specific units, regarding some specific models. Let's quickly go over the brief note that we do have here. And it looks like they want to try to standardize some of the terminology that they use. Quickly here, due to ongoing confusion about the way stats are presented, we are changing the way game speed sensitive stats are displayed on blog posts. So for those that are curious, for blog posts, typically that might be changing here, but typically they would have like in-game like times and speed, and then the actual real time, like times and speed. This is just because the in-game clock is actually different to regular clock. It actually does go a little bit faster. It's just a little bit different, so timings are a little bit weird, and they would always like place both times instead of just one. And I think it looks like they might be getting rid of that here. So here, instead of the usual normal speed, faster speed presentation stats like movement speed and attack period will be now written in faster speed, normal speed. This change better aligns with how our readers digest blog post content. For those that are curious, faster speed is what the game is played at. Normal speed is, I guess, like regular time. And yeah, as it's being stated here, usually it'd be normal speed first and faster speed. Now it's going to be the opposite, faster speed and then normal speed. This is probably a good thing. The reason for this is because faster speed is how we digest things, just because that's relevant to the game itself when we do play the game, when we do watch and view the game and commentate on the game as well. So again, it's just a little bit of a change that they're going to be making moving forward regarding how they present some of these values. Cool. Scrolling on down, general changes. Minimap pings for potential enemy start locations now last for 90 seconds instead of 60 seconds. Okay, interesting. For those that are curious what this is, in StarCraft Evolution, whenever you spawn into a 4-player spawn map, for example, you actually get pinged possible spawn locations. Now, this has been adjusted. Originally, it was, okay, so there are 4 possible spawn locations. You spawn into one of them, and this is specific for 4-player spawn maps, you'll get pinged 2 locations where your opponent is, basically removing one of the options. So then you know, okay, like, I know 100% they're not at this location. Now it's like 50-50 when it comes to scouting, just to reduce the RNG and the likelihood that you would miss a cheese, a proxy, a rush, because now there's a higher chance that you will scout your opponent on a 4-player spawn map. I say this was how it was originally. That was changed in 1.16, in the 1.16 patch. It was changed where I think it was changed that then it was like it would show you 2, but there was only like a 50% chance. It was like a percentage chance that would actually trigger, otherwise it wouldn't. It's like something along those lines. That was a more recent change that they kind of went through and they're kind of messing with. Here, so those pings that we're referring to that would let you know where your opponent spawns or where they could potentially spawn, looks like it lasted 60 seconds. Now they're increasing that to 90 seconds. So now you have a higher chance of, remembering or keeping an eye on your minimap and recognizing where those locations are, which I'm all for. It looks like it's just maybe some players will miss that, or maybe they're just so focused on their opener that it'd be maybe a little bit unforgiving. They check, they glance over, and bam, they missed it, and it can be maybe a little bit harder to determine. So this is just a way to help with that. And it even says here, this change further ensures that players know where to scout for their opponent's 4 spawn locations, that casters can see them and follow player scouting patterns. That last line is an interesting one, just because I wonder if this was just for casters. Very often we would cast, I would introduce the players, right? We do our player intros, we do our fanfares, like spawning in the bottom right hand corner, we have Scarlett from Canada representing Shopify, like we'd have our player intros. By the time we finish them, I'm pretty sure those 60 seconds were up, especially if Yaku was casting. So then I would very often finish the intro and then check to see where they saw the spawn location of their opponent, just so I know, like, where they're going to be checking and the chances of that and where they're going to send their worker. But often I would miss the interval and I wouldn't know where they were pinged. Obviously, as a caster, we see where their opponent is, but I don't know what they have seen. I'll be honest, I always believed that we couldn't see that. I think we tested trying to check their vision and things of that nature, and I don't think we could. But maybe we could. Maybe we just miss it every time. It's possible. So this might just be for casters as well. They might have like timed how long an intro is and then gotten the average and then just made sure that we had a little bit of time after an intro to be to be able to see spawn locations. Maybe. It's going down. We have Terran changes coming up here. First, we have the Academy, the Firebat, and the Medic. Ooh, so before looking at any of the blog posts, it looks like, and these are all nerfs, of course, I feel like we have this discussion every single time we talk about the patch for StarCraft Evolution or the mod of StarCraft Evolution. Brood War Terran is considered to be quite strong, quite powerful, especially bio, especially 2-on-1s, or I should say 3-racks builds and 3-racks timings. And this is like, what, the 6th or 7th time that they're getting nerfed? Brood War Terran they've been messing around a lot with the Academy, with stim timings, upgrade timings, the Firebat, the Medic, the Marine. So many adjustments have been made because it has been so dominant and so prevalent. Looks like here we have another adjustment, another nerf to Bio Terran. We have the build cost increase from 125 to 150 minerals. With the Firebat HP decrease from 65 to 55, and we have the Medic decrease the HP restoration per NG from 2.25 to 2 as well. Okay, so we are going to be, and again, we'll be getting into the rationale for this, but we can already assume what this is kind of in regards to. The performance of Brood War Terran bio armies remains somewhat overwhelming, particularly against SE2 Zerg. A reduction of the Medic's heal NG efficiently targets the all-around versatility and longevity of Brood War bio armies without directly affecting in combat performances. Decreased Firebat HP targets early game interaction against SE2 Zerg, where the sheer efficiency of the Firebat against Zerglings and the need for Queens or Roaches to kill at first restricts SE2 Zerg's defensive options. The reversion in Academy to its original build cost is a third incremental adjustment to the strength of Stimpack timings, as well as a slide to overuse of gathering information when playing mech. So again, like in regards to what this is referring to, basically, very often games would end early, just because of the strength of these builds, the strength of these pushes. There's also a bit of a comment here regarding roach-based openers and the prevalence of roach-based openers to be able to defend, be safe against this kind of play. Again, this has been quite prevalent. Bearing in mind that this patch is a little bit outdated, we are going to be going through patch 1.16.1, 0.2, and 0.3. These patches have been released over the past month of play, so we're going to be quickly going through every single one of these amendments, of these updates to patch 1.16. Well, we're getting there. Because we unfortunately weren't able to discuss this in previous podcasts. Scrolling down, we have the Goliath. Also, in regards to mech, they're referring to the Academy. You do need the Academy to actually get a comstat station to actually be able to scan. Not just that, but also, I believe, can be a prerequisite for other such tech. So it is still somewhat relevant. I mean, they're talking about gathering information when playing mech, so that is in regards to scan, in regards to the comstat station. Scrolling down, we have the Goliath. The Goliath decrease Karen boosters range bonus plus 2.5 to 2. Okay, so we're going to be nerfing the range bonus. Scrolling down, despite a slight nerf to Karen Booster's range bonus, the Goliath's strong maneuverability allows it to dominate slower airborne targets. Tempest, for instance, are unable to kite effectively against Goliaths unless aided by highly obstructive terrain. To fix this, the Goliath post Karen Booster's range has been reverted to 8. Okay, so this is just in regards to the anti-air capabilities. Speaking of anti-air capabilities of mech, we go into the Valkyrie, which is also going to be adjusted here. Interesting. So it looks like it is going to be a little bit cheaper to produce. It's going from 250, 125 to 200, 100. Decreased build time as well, so it's going to be cheaper. It's going to be faster to build as well, from 32.9 seconds to 32.1. And scrolling down a little bit further here, we have a decreased attack damage. Okay, from 5.25 times 8 to 4.5 times 8. Likewise, damage versus armored has been decreased by 1. So instead of 7 times 8, it's going to be 6 times 8. 8 is in regards to the shots that it does unload, as it is splash damage. And damage versus light has also been reduced from 4.375 to 3.75. Okay. So this is once again in regards to anti-air capabilities, as again that's typically what the Valkyrie is used for. Scoring down from a balance perspective, the Valkyrie is problematic in 2 ways. One hand, a sizable group of Valkyries larger than a certain critical mass supply simply obliterates enemies without counterplay. So this was something that was addressed, I believe, in 1.16. If you remember, I know it was quite some time ago, but in 1.16, I believe there was a standardization of nerfing the certain units and their splash damage. I believe the Valkyrie was involved. I believe the Corsair was also involved as well. I believe the Valkyrie, the Corsair, and maybe the Devourer as well. But I believe a bunch of that like splash damage, anti-air damage was kind of reduced, just because it would often be kind of crazy just how much damage you could output in such a short amount of time as well. It would basically punish stacking very, very hard, and I remember that being addressed in the previous patch, but looks like they're taking it a little bit of a step further here, specifically with the Valkyrie. This is particularly difficult for SC2 Zerg, which must be able to answer Valkyrie science vessel battlecruiser armies in late game. Brutal Terran is often able to gather Valkyries from a comfortable defensive stance. In this matchup, this fact motivated previous nerfs to the Valkyrie damage in 1.16. Oh, yeah, that's what we just mentioned, and it is addressing that. So yeah, from my memory, I believe in 1.16, in that patch, the Valkyrie, the Corsair, like a bunch of like these units that do a lot of splash damage, that this was nerfed, but it looks like they are going a little bit further with that here as well. Looks like they maybe thought they hadn't done enough. Bearing in mind that I don't actually have as much context as to whether or not these changes are warranted, just because we, if you remember at the beginning of us discussing this patch, we spoke about how in recent times we just haven't been able to cast as much StarCraft Evolution, especially during like the quote-unquote PTR period. So because of that, I don't really have as much context to go through for specifically 16.1, 16.2, and 16.3. It's in that kind of era of StarCraft Evolution where we don't have as much kind of like first-hand experience covering tournaments because our coverage was very, very limited on StarCraft Evolution. So I kind of have to go off of their word whether or not this is kind of like warranted or not. I mean, we're going to be going over the other amendment patches as well. Maybe they go back on it, maybe they push it further. We'll try to piece it all together. On the other hand, acquiring Valkyries in the first place can be a struggle, since a small number of Valkyries, even in their strongest state, can be picked off without accomplishing anything. So I guess this is in regards to making them cheaper, making them faster to build, just making them more accessible, but reducing its power. I mean, we'll see if they're able to achieve what it is that they're looking for here. This is most notable against SG Terran, where a low Valkyrie count can easily be destroyed by a longer range of Vikings. Therefore, it is difficult for Brood War Terran to wrestle air control away from SG Terran. Again, air control is just a big part of TVT, period. I think I would also attribute that to SE Evolution TVT as well. Moreover, unlike other air-to-air units like the Corruptor, which can use Caustic Spray, or the Devourer, which is supportive units, the Valkyrie is solely a damage dealer and must be masked to be effective. So yes, they had that rationale in regards to the Valkyrie. Scrolling down, we do have Zerg changes. Queen, decrease and snare cast range from 10 to 9. Decrease parasite cast range from 10 to 9. Decrease spawn broodlings. Oh Jesus, just flat out nerf here. It looks like just nerfing the range from 10 to 9. I mean, 10 does sound insanely oppressive, and ideally you do want some counterplay available in regards to exposing your spellcasters and trying to punish them. Likewise, the Defiler, HP decrease from 90 to 80. Interesting. I'm curious as to what the rationale is in regards to the Defiler being a little bit weaker. We'll see if it has anything to do with, say, something like snipe damage. Let's have a look. Due to the SC2 Ghost supply cost being increased from 2 to 3 in StarCraft 2's patch, SC2 Terran late game has suffered considerably against Brood War Zerg. Interesting. Although Terran can contend with Zerg until the late game, this changes once Zerg acquires Queens and Defilers. Since patch 5.0.14 did not provide compensation to this nerf, the drop in power on SC2 Terran's side is noticeable in the late game. Interesting. It's interesting to see how a patch to SC2 impacts StarCraft Evolution. They have to compensate for that, for sure. Top SC2 Terran in the late game against Brood War Zerg, and increase the overall interactivity of the Queen with enemy units. The cast ranges of the Queen spells have been reduced to 9. This places the Queen in slightly more danger when using the spells. Okay, interesting. I will say that this is something that, of course, SC2 Terran players have had to contend with when it comes to base SC2. Having to work with a smaller ghost count. I think most players are in favor of it, but as they mentioned, like maybe some compensation has to be done here with the Queens, with the Filer. We'll see how this impacts other matchups, is what I will say, just because these spellcasters can also be quite influential against Protoss, against other races, of course, and even against Zerg and ZVZ. So curious to see how this impacts the other matchups, as it will do so, not just ZVT. So it's interesting. Scrolling down, one final Protoss change to the fleet beacon increased the build cost from 250, 200 to 300, 200 as well. This change restores the fleet beacon to its original cost and further discourages quickly rushing carriers and disruption web, which probably is not a bad thing to discourage something like a carrier rush. Whether it does or doesn't, I mean, we'll find out. We will find out. So barely any Protoss changes with this first amendment. Terran was mainly hit here. It was interesting. It's a very targeted patch. Very, very targeted, very lean as well. I mean, it is like an amendment patch. And this is one like the pros, I guess, of something like StarCraft Evolution. You don't have to go through all this testing period and have to go through all these kind of like layers of confirming and checking. So there are, again, pros and cons to this being updated on a more regular basis, right? Like every couple of weeks you can push through certain changes. You can make an argument for sure when it comes to some of these changes where it's like, oh, you know, especially after a big change occurs, you want to let the meta settle. You want players to explore and come up with their own solutions. So there are pros and cons when it comes to pushing changes on a regular basis, because you don't allow players to do that as much, because you're stepping in and you're saying like, oh, this is too strong, let's nerf it, before giving them time. That I'm not saying that is the case here, just saying that that is something to bear in mind in regards to how this is being handled. But overall, as I mentioned before, I don't have as much greater context as to how 1.16 has been looking, because basically during the launch of 1.16, I think that's around the last time we casted. I think the last big like SEVO event that we covered was StarCraft Evolution Masters number 4, which was like the PTR, which was like the PTR 1.16 event, because I believe we casted it from the clean feed because we couldn't quite gain access to it regularly. So again, it's been a while. But with that, that wraps up our initial 1.16.1 patch. Again, mainly addressing Bio Terran, addressing the Valkyrie when it comes to the splash damage, when it comes to its anti-air. Likewise, trying to compensate for the SSU Terran in regards to spellcasters with the Violet and the Queen. Interesting. That leads us into the next patch, into 16.2. The previous one was on the 8th of August. This is a couple of days later, less than a week later, on the 13th of August. Okay. So quite quickly, like again, less than a week after the previous patch. This is, as we were mentioning, kind of like the pros and cons is, we'll see what they address. We'll see. And of course, this was, I think, maybe even the last patch before the StarCraft Evolution Championship. Potentially. Let's quickly go over the brief notes. Due to ongoing confusion. Were they discussing this again? Wait, what? Am I getting deja vu? Am I crazy? Am I crazy? Okay. Did they switch it back?
It's the same intro. Pretty sure it's the same.
Okay.
No, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. It's exactly copy pasted. Yeah.
Okay. I thought I was going crazy.
Look,
yeah,
maybe someone didn't
maybe they
read
copy
the previous
pasted the
patch.
template.
Yeah, maybe someone.
maybe
Someone didn't read the previous patch, so they need to.
We need to hammer it down. It's true. We're hammering it down. It's fine. Yeah. Okay. Or someone copy pasted this and left the same brief notes and maybe didn't update it. It's fine. Typically, the brief note goes over the changes that are coming up, but it's all good. Terran changes. Again, is this the 8th patch that has nerfed Brood War Terran? The Brood War Terran Bio. Okay, let's go. I'm sorry. I say my apologies. Actually, I say nerfed. Looks like there's some buffs here. Hold on. Marine. It says Marine here. It's really Stim. It's kind of weird that it has the Marine and the Firebat here, but sure. I guess I understand. It's just because these are the units that are affected by the upgrade. So instead of posting the upgrade itself, it's listing the units. But Stim, decreased research time. Okay, so once again they're adjusting by a 10. I should emphasize that. So it looks like Stim is going to be researching a little bit faster. I do remember it wasn't too long ago that they increased the research time. Looks like now they decreasing the research time. Interesting. They've increased the research time of the uranium of the U238 shells. Okay, from 78.6 to 85.7. Interesting that they're decreasing Stim and increasing shells. Again, we'll kind of see what they're referring to. While Brood War Bio armies have strong scaling into the mid-game, Stim timings themselves have lost much of their edge as the defense has been figured out, even against SSU Zerg, where they have historically been strongest. If you remember, we spoke about this in the previous patch, and I think even in the one before that, referring to Roach-based openers and Roach-based play against Bio have been very safe. We have even seen some Ling Bane defense against the early Stim timings, which I don't think is a bad thing. I would say that ideally this encourages different openers, different play styles, and not just the same timings from Terran players. So I would say that's probably a positive thing. But if that is occur, and which is why I was really appreciative of, I think it was Tasia. I think it was Tasia and Dice as well. They were much more diverse when it comes to their builds and when it comes to their play, especially against Zerg as well. I think that was one of the more exciting things about the two of them. It was very refreshing casting Tasia and Dice against Zerg, just because it did feel like they were a little bit more exploratory and they were a little bit less one note. Personally, from my recollection, covering the two of them. Slight reduction in research time should help in this regard. U238 shells, research time is increased to avoid consequently speeding up mid-game bio timings. Basically, the short little rant that we had is almost justified by what this is saying. I spoke earlier about how if you're patching this frequently and this often, you're not letting players like kind of learn, adapt, and respond. And what I'm referring to here is I'm referring to the strength of Brood or Terran. And if you've been watching players like Shin, watching players like 3 Point, even Dark previously, even in the rise and in the peak, the prime kind of era of 3x stim, of these bio pushes and these stim timings, the best of the best Zerg players, they were holding, they were defending, they were figuring it out, and they were able to surpass that. Able to surpass that, able to shut it down, and able to force longer games. Only the best of the best, though, is what I'm referring to. Despite that, nerfs were still coming in, and as a result, like as they get more and more refined in their responses, and as other Zerg players pick up on that, and as they grow and as they evolve, as they learn, then you're like, oh, maybe we like nerfed this a little bit too much when we didn't need to. Now we have to revert those changes. So I think this is like probably a good example of that. Now you could make an argument that even though these Zerg players were learning, even though they were adapting, even though they were defending and forcing longer games, that doesn't necessarily make things balanced or make it good, because if you look at the game states, you're forcing certain play that you might not want. This is the big issue right now when it comes to StarCraft 2 ZBT, when it comes to roach openers. If you remember, we spoke about this when we had a discussion about Hero Marine and Gabe and his response to Pig's proposed patch notes, about how he was, is the word misguided, or he was kind of missing the point. We spoke about how Gabe, one of his gripes about the proposed patch notes was that if you remember, he said something along the lines of, I think the ZVT is in a good place right now. I don't know why Pig wants to push for these changes, for these buffs to promote more variety and different play when the win rates are like in a good place. And the problem there is that sure, they could be in a good place, but if you look at the games that are actually happening and the kind of play that is transpiring, that's where the issues lie. I'm referring specifically about how Ling Bane has fallen by the wayside in ZVT, and we've seen a lot of roach-based builds and roach-based openers because they're safer. And on the one hand, yes, Zerg players are winning, but if you look at how they're winning and how they're surviving and how they're playing, and if you look at that, you might be thinking that's maybe not the healthiest thing for the game. Maybe that's not the most entertaining thing. It's not what people want. It's not what people like. Historically, we spoke about it. Everyone, it's rare nowadays, but Ling Bane Muta is very much so out of meta. It's not really viable. It's very difficult to get into. So the idea of trying to promote something like Ling Bane Muta, in my mind, makes sense, because you're looking out for pushing a better or more exciting play style. And if you look at quote unquote win rates, like that doesn't tell you that. It doesn't tell you what's happening in those games. It doesn't tell you how they're playing. It doesn't tell you why they're playing in such a way. And a lot of people have definitely expressed their unfortunate disappointments in how the meta has shaped out, and it's just not as entertaining. And I would agree with that. It's just not as entertaining like seeing roach-based openers. It's less intense. It's slower paced. It has its own issues, of course. So winding it back to this is why I'm saying that, like, you know, that's also why, like, sure, maybe Zerg players have been getting better at defending against it, but depending on their play, like, that also tells you, like, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Do we want this? Do we not want this? Like, that's kind of a lot that goes into it outside of just win rates, right? Outside of just win rates. Which makes, you know, balance so much more difficult at times, of course. Regardless, we do have our buff here to stim. Scrolling down, we do have our Vulture. We have something more mech focused. Vulture, Siege Tank, and Science Vessel. Okay. Increased Ion Thruster's research time from 57 to 64. This is most likely trying to address, there is a build, there's like a double factory, like mass Vulture all-in or one base play that you can go for that also was very prevalent and very popular. I would imagine that increasing the research time on Ion Thrusters is designed to target that specifically, that kind of rush. That specific build. Scrolling down, decreased Spider-Mine's research time from 71.4 to 57.1. That's actually quite hefty. Jesus. That's kind of crazy. Okay. At the same time, you could argue that it's a more important upgrade because you're often reliant on spider mines, and that also helps when it comes to defensive play as well. So I'm curious to hear the rationale on that and the reasoning for that. Scrolling down, we have the Siege Tank. Decreased Mjolnir 120mm shot cannon attack period from 2.8 to 2.7. Okay. So it's gonna have a shorter attack period, so it shoots more often, slightly. Science also increase the radiate effect radius, target radius, plus 0.875 to 1. Okay, so increased radius on a radiate. These changes reverse slight over-nerfing of Brood War Terran units that resulted in them losing their identities. Due to recent nerfs, 2 Factory Vulture play has been substantially weakened, in particular. Spider-Mine research taking longer than Ion Thrusters research does change the feeling of such play. Okay, there's a bit of a typo there. Oh, no, wait, no, it's fine. Longer than Iron Thrusters research does change. It's fine. Of such play drastically from Brood War. These Vulture changes reduce the overall time spent researching upgrades. Cool. With Brood War Terran's most powerful, so it's a way to overall decrease the time it takes to get both upgrades, but also still make sure that players aren't rushing Iron Thrusters and rushing into that. With Brood War Terran's most powerful anti-air options nerfed, we saw that in the previous patch, air units which were previously just an afterthought are now able to effectively counter mech play. With this in mind, the Siege Tank is being reverted to its pre-1.16 attack period. Okay, cool. Also in patch 1.16, the radius of Irradiate was greatly reduced, helping to prevent Zerg armies from being completely annihilated when dealing with large numbers of science vessels. However, now it is hard to feel the effects of even a few Irradiates used together. This incremental change is intended to make use of Irradiates more meaningful without making it overwhelming. I'm curious to see how this dynamic is approached. Personally, I have seen a lot of Irradiates used in ZVT, and I love seeing the counterplay of Zerg players peeling off units that are affected or just killing their own units as well to deal with that. So there is like counterplay there. So yeah, it's interesting that they feel the need to increase this once again, which again I'm not too opposed of, just because there is counterplay there, for sure. Scrolling down, Zerg changes. Overlord increased numerous carapace research time from 28.6 to 35.7. Interesting. This upgrade is having its research time lengthened slightly to allow for slightly longer window between when fast detection is required and when it actually becomes available. For example, this opens up more meaningful opportunities for Banshee harassment. Potentially. Obviously, with Overlords, I mean, does it? I don't know if that's true. I feel like Overlords are going to be covering mineral lines regardless of speed or not. So I don't know if that's going to benefit what was mentioned here in the comments. In fact, I would say that it shouldn't, just because Overlords are going to be in mineral lines regardless. But I'm not opposed to reducing this, especially because, I mean, Brutal Terran is just different because all Overlords are detectors. Just winding it back, Overseer isn't a thing, right? Overseer is not a thing. Overlords in general, they are detectors. So because that, going into like Dark Templar or Banshees, in general, cloak units are less effective. They're a little bit less effective against Brood War Zerg. So trying to give them a little bit more effectiveness here, it makes sense in my mind just to make it a little bit more viable in terms of harassing, in terms of being active on the map. Sure, I can see that. Zergling, decrease attack period from 0.429 to 0.421. Okay, I know that a lot of Zergling, a lot of these changes, I'm not saying that this is the case here, but I know that a lot of changes to Zerglings and Hydras are really impactful to ZVZ, and there's been a lot of discussion about that, and I'm curious if this is also about ZVZ as well. So the Brutal Zergling is going to have a greater attack rate. I remember they nerfed this, if I recall, in the previous patch. Hydra's increased attack period from 0.67 to 0.69. Nice. Scrolling down. Zergling has proven to be slightly underwhelming unit as of late, especially in ZVZ. Yeah, there you go. So typically whenever there's a change to the Zergling in such a manner, like it's usually in regards to ZVZ. There's definitely a fine balance to be had between the ZVZ interaction, just because Banelings exist for SE2 and they don't exist for Brood War Zerg, so there's definitely a lot of fine tuning that has to be had there in regards to the strength of the Zergling to make up for that, to compensate. Of course, the strength of the Hydra as well. Meanwhile, the Hydralist has once again shown itself to be too strong of a generalist. It's definitely difficult to, again, fine tune the Zergling, the Hydralist. The reason why I bring this up is just because for Brood War Zerg, they don't have as much variety in how they construct their armies. This is probably the biggest downside here of Brood War Zerg, is unlike for SE2 Zerg, they've got Ling Bane, they've got Ling Bane Roach Ravager, of course, so they can get into a Roach Ravager based composition. They can take up into Ultras, take up into Lurkers. Here, it's Ling Hydra. it has to be Ling. They don't have the option to go into Ling Bane and stay on Ling Bane. They don't have the option to go into like a Roach based composition. I guess they can go into Spire Tech, I guess, in certain circumstances. But like the Hydra is very much a core part of Brood War Zerg, and yeah, that's definitely I don't envy trying to make sure that it stays as balanced as it can be. Like, it's not too strong, not too weak. Because I feel like a lot hinges on the Hydra. To incentivize more varied army compositions and allow Marines to be effective against the Hydralist, we are moving some of the power to the Zergling. Okay. So it looks like part of this is trying to maybe push towards more Ling heavy compositions and maybe open up the possibility of going like pure Ling into Ultra. I don't know if that's possible or viable as a Brood War Zerg, but it looks like they're trying to push for that. This particular nerf to the Hydra is much more conservative than last time. The Hydra had a sack period nerfed from this amount, which should simply the Hydralist's intended counters to defeat it without crippling its performance outright. Interesting. Lastly, the Lurker. Decrease Lurker aspect research costs 200 to 150. Increase morph cost from 5075 to 5100. Increased total morph cost as well. Decreased Lurker HP. Increased Lurker attack damage from 20 to 25. Decreased Lurker attack damage bonus +5 versus light to +0. Interesting. Okay, so the Lurker is going to cost more, at least when it comes to individual morph costs. It's going to have less HP. It's going to do less damage versus light, less bonus damage versus light, but just I guess that just gets added to the base damage overall. Okay, interesting. Recently, the Lurker's morph cost was reduced by 25 gas. I guess that was in 1.16. The intention was to offset to the increase to the cost of Lurker aspect research and make it easier for Brood War Zerg to defend against S2 Terran timings. But in fact, it has resulted in S2 Terran having too few opportunities for early damage. Interesting. Moreover, since Zerg can now produce so many Lurkers on just 6 Vesuvian Gas Geysers, S2 Terran had no answers to Lurkers, as Terran is lacking in supply defense tools to kill large numbers of non-light, non-armored units. To address this, we've reverted the Lurker Vesuvian Gas cost, as well as revert its HP to its original Brood War value. This, I feel like for me, this is the change that I would keep an eye on the most. Just because, I mean, we spoke about it. We just spoke about how it feels like Brood War Zerg has less variety available, so the options that it has have to be solid. So yeah, we'll see if this is too much. We'll see if it's all good. We'll see if Zerg players can still defend against early aggression. I mean, I'm sure they can. It's just going to push for a certain style, maybe even push for earlier Lurker tech just to be safe against this sort of thing. See. To avoid reducing Lurker's power too much in the other matchups, its bonus damage against light targets is now dealt to all enemies. This does not affect meaningfully improve its performance against Marine heavy Terran armies, but it's substantial compensation against Zerg and Protoss armies, which tend to have plenty of non-light units. Okay. Yeah, interesting. This is definitely something I'd be interested to see come into play. So we haven't casted Zerg as of late. Scoring down Protoss changes. Zealots. HP decreased by 10, increased, and that's been added to the shields instead. Same to be said with the Dragoon and with the Reaver, okay? So less HP, more shields. Decreased scarab production time from 5.7 to 4.69. Decreased scarab movement speed from 9.1 to 8.4. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. I'm most interested in the movement speed reduction. These changes in the vitals of these units allow the disruption purification over to one-shot them, returning some badly needed power to execute Protoss frontal engagements in mid-game Protoss versus Protoss. True. If you remember, disruptors, they do bonus damage to shield-based units, so it looks like this is specifically to give Protoss more power in PvP. It's also going to mean that these units are going to be a little bit weaker against EMP as well in Terran versus Protoss matchups. That's also a bit of a side effect. Maybe not the biggest of deals, but that's also going to be applied here. The decrease in scarab production time targets specific interactions in early game PvP when a Reaver has been produced from the robotics facility of a 2-gate expanding Brutal Protoss player defending all-in from S2 Protoss. The decreased scarab production time will afford the Brutal player a critical extra 1 to 2 scarabs. However, it will largely not affect other matchups or phases of the game, since Reavers in ideal play are always full on scarabs and rarely have the opportunity to deplete all 5. I would say that this is probably going to be causing some maybe different interactions between Reaver openers in PvT. This might actually be the reason why, if you remember, when we casted Classic versus Tasia recently a couple of days ago, Classic, I think almost every game he opened Reaver. Almost, like Dragoon into Reaver, which is standard, of course, but even in the past, Classic would often mix things up. He would often mix in different builds from time to time, but that was not the case in his recent show match against Tasia. This might be a part of it, just because of that scarab production time, of having potentially 1 or 2 extra scarabs available to you when you hit across the map. Just because when you're going for that specific build, you don't have like a full arsenal of scarabs. You only have a handful of them available because you're going for that opener, because you're trying to hit as quickly as possible. So this is something that potentially also impacts that opener as well. Potentially. Just piecing things together. So, yeah, interesting changes to the Reaver, interesting changes. Also, I should say that with the decreased movement speed, that also potentially gives a little bit more counterplay available against the Reaver. But changes to the Reaver, changes to the Lurker are things that I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye open for when it comes to whether it's too much or too little when it comes to covering some of these events. But again, this was less than a week. This was less than a week after the previous patch, and then that leads us into 1.16.3, which is the next day. Wait, what? So this was posted on the 13th of August. Point 3 was posted on the 14th of August. Wait, what? Oh wait, no. I think it's the same thing. Okay.
No, there's new
No,
stuff.
it's
There's
different.
a new defiler model.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just a little bit confused. This was the next day. Wait, what? Am I crazy? The last one was on the 13th of August. This is the 14th of August. Okay. Okay. This is a day later. So a day later, after a long wait, they have the new Defiler model. Cool. We have a new model for the Defiler. Brief note, due to ongoing confusion, it's the same. They just copy pasted it. It's fine. And we just go straight into the changes again. Okay. Decreased build time of the racks. Increased build time of the academy. Wait, did we not just touch the academy? Hold on. In 16.1? Or was it Stim? It was so in 16.1 they increased the build cost of the academy, and here they're increasing the build time of the academy. So every patch, this is the next day we got some more changes for Bioterran. Like Brood War Bioterran have been, it's like every 2 weeks, like they mess around with the numbers every time. Okay, so decreased build time. for the rack, so it's now going to be finishing up a little bit faster by a couple of seconds. Likewise, the Academy increased build time from 21.4 to 25. Marine increased attack period from 0.67 to 0.69, and increased the attack period with stim as well. Okay, so that means that they attack less frequently. So its overall DPS is going to be hindered. Yeah, this what happened? What happened in 24 hours that caused them to push this out? That's what I'm most surprised by. What events occurred in 24 hours? Within that 24-hour period where they're like, we gotta stop this. We gotta push it out now. Oh my god. The Marine is receiving an attack period in line with yesterday's Hydra nerf. Both seem slightly overtuned as generalists, holding out in seemingly unfavorable fights with a lack of diversity, even though they both have to be to some degree. Okay. To partly compensate for the worst stack period in the other game and to enable a faster ramping up of production in the late game relative to SG barracks and reactors, the racks is also having build time decrease slightly. To ensure impact timings are not sped up, the Academy time has been increased by the same amount. Proxy barracks play has not been too popular, and we expect with further nerfs to the Marine base stack period that will not change. Okay. So here they're saying they're hoping that they decrease the build time of the racks. They're hoping that this doesn't promote more proxy play. That's the hope here. I mean, sure. I would hope so as well. I would hope so as well. Specifically, this is once again going to slightly hurt mech. I say mech. Specifically, what this does, because the Academy build time has been okay. So they're saying that they're trying to compensate things, and this comment specifically is in regards to stim timings. They're like, okay, the racks takes less time, but the Academy takes more time, and overall it's still going to take the exact same amount of time. But what this really does is that this will be causing scans to come online a little bit later. So this is going to be punishing detection that much more for Terran, even though I think in one of the previous patches, like, they tried to address that for Terran specifically. Am I crazy? I need to quickly check. Was it 16.2? I could be seeing things. Oh yeah, right. That was when it came to the build cost. True. So that is going to impact detection slightly. Maybe not the biggest of deals. It is like 5 seconds, but every second does count. So that is going to be something impacted by this for sure. Likewise, when it comes to actually getting into stim as an upgrade, if it's something that you're trying to rush into. So yeah, interesting. That's just gonna be a byproduct of this, of course. It's gonna be a byproduct. Scrolling down, we have the armory. Armory increased research cost for vehicle plating level 2 and level 3 as well. With the siege tank back to its old strength in 1.15 and changes to the Wraith and Valkyrie to improve their overall utility, these upgrades, which were originally cheapened to make researching both ground and air upgrades easier, are reverted to their original cost. Okay, that's to compensate. Missiles are decreased armor from 1 to 0. This change is to further encourage the use of air units against mech play. Interesting. I wonder what happened in that one day, because we spoke about it, but for the previous patch just before this, they were the previous 2 patches even, they were trying to address specifically mech anti-air, right? Like, they had nerfed the Goliath range, and they had nerfed the Valkyrie as well, and just the amount of damage that it does. But this is like kind of further pushing that here in regards to, I guess, the missile turret. Interesting. It's something that they're specifically concerned about, and they're wanting to push. If you remember, we spoke earlier about like trying to push for certain play and trying to make certain styles more viable. This feels like wanting to push like Mutaplay specifically. Interesting. Scrolling down, Zerg changes. Spore Colony, decrease armor from 1 to 0 for the Spore. This change is to enable SG buy drops to find more opportunities for damage in the early and mid game. Okay. Interesting. This... I don't know how common. I rarely cast ZVZ nowadays in StarCraft Evolution. I wonder how common Mutaplay is. I mean, I can't imagine it really is, just because Hydras are so common for Brood War Zerg, so I can't imagine Mutaplay would be too common for SC2 Zerg side of things, so I don't think that's going to impact that too much. Often we don't see Oracles try to dive in and focus on Spore colonies. It's often not really seen. Okay, sure, interesting. And the Queen, increased spawn breeding range. Oh, we reverted the change. Okay, so we revert the Queen change. Since spawned broodlings is already cancelled if the Queen dies before the projectile reaches its target, reasonable counterplay to the ability already exists, and this range reduction is unnecessary. Interesting. Okay. So they felt that this was an unnecessary change earlier. Once again, like during this period with these during this 1 day period, we weren't casting much. So it's hard to say this period of time with these 3 patches. It's hard to say whether there's any kind of like value behind like any of these comments or any truth behind it. But sure, take it at its word. But yeah, once again, just like a small little amendment patch here. And I believe this was the last patch before the big event, before the championship. Interesting. And then we have the SE Evo, the re-entry log. Do you know what this is in regards to, Kuro? Is this separate?
So the entry log is basically was posted like for those who have not been keeping up with the patches, but they want to cast the championship. Like this is like the current state of the game, essentially, kind of thing.
Okay, interesting. I guess maybe there's value in going over this, just because again we haven't casted for like a month. But we'll see what they say. SE Evo completes 101 August 2025. Brutal and Soccer 2 racial stats. Soccer 2 races are practically unchanged from the current official Lace Void versions. The only difference is that they have additional non-armor related tags. Brutal races are similar in overall feel and function, but regularly updated for balance and design. Yeah, this is like a tutorial. This is like it's like, hey, if you've never casted
like
StarCraft Illusion before, yeah. Okay, I see. This is almost like, it's almost like a cheat sheet. Like if there's like a caster who's never covered SEVA before, this is like things to discuss. But this, I do know there were some changes made to Mischance. In my mind, it was 50-50, but it looks like range attacks from ground units on low ground targeting any units on high ground will miss 46.875% of the time. I think I'm okay saying 50%. But sure, technically 46.875. Okay. Ground, melee, and all air units never miss. Okay. This is specifically for high ground, low ground. Meanwhile, line of sight blockers, bushes, doesn't even matter, even if they're in the same bush or in the air. Okay. Cool. Full play small map pings. This I wanted to clarify, just because I know they've played around with it a little bit. Pings are visible for 90 seconds. Casters can view which spawns have been revealed by selecting one of the units and holding V. Okay, so you have to check their vision specifically within those 90 seconds. Again, I'm pretty sure it was increased just for casters. Let's go. But something that isn't addressed here is that, if I'm not mistaken, Kuro, there was a patch recently which changed it so that instead of originally, if you remember, for a 4-player spawn map, they'd spawn in one of 2 locations and they would ping 2 locations. But then recently there was a patch that made it so that there was like a % chance of that even happening. Of the pings even occurring specifically. So it wasn't like 100% that would happen on a 4-player spawn map. But maybe they reverted that change. Maybe. Oh, thank you. We appreciate the kind words. Gracias, papi, gracias. Maps, modeling. Okay, all good. All good. So yeah, this is like a TLDR sort of thing. Nice. With that concludes our news for the week. Again, just going over the roster changes, the RSL fan votes, and of course StarCraft Evolution patch updates. Again, just blazing through 3 of these in a row. Again, we do apologize for not being as up to date with StarCraft Evolution. As we mentioned before, we've just been so engrossed with everything else, with all the other content, all the other StarCraft. Now that the championship has begun, we will be going over and delving back into StarCraft Evolution. That should be starting tomorrow. Tomorrow we should be, we already casted the CranKy Epic Series show match, but we should be covering the StarCraft Evolution Championship group stage, at least one of the groups tomorrow. Should be, emphasis on that. That should be tomorrow, and we should be able to delve further into it in the coming weeks. And likewise, we'll be going over some of those results later on today as well. For now, we're going to be going on a break. We're going to be going on a short break. Again, StarCraft Evolution, the championship is in full swing. I don't imagine we're going to be getting any additional patches until after the event. I'm sure the event itself is going to dictate how a lot of the races are performing and any changes that will be needing to occur. Again, a shout out to the team working behind the scenes on this event as well. Sorry, on the event on StarCraft Evolution, just because they are hoping and wanting to provide like the best game that they can, of course, by adjusting values, by making sure everything not just is balanced but also is fun to compete, fun to play, fun to watch as well. So again, best of luck to all those working behind the scenes at Team Krapulu, and really cool to see more model updates as well. For now, though, we're going to be going on a short break. When we come back, we will have our tournament results regarding the CranKy Epic Series, the Thermal 2v2 Circuit, StarCraft Evolution events, other amateur events, and other patch tournaments as well. There's a lot to get into. So we'll see you soon after the break with those tournament results. See you soon.